Okay, so welcome for another month of the Girls Club. And this month we have Brittany and Leslie joining us again, as usual. And we have Derek Bartolacelli coming in with us. And we are going to have Derek introduce himself a little bit and talk about his work. But this month, we're going to be talking about the political meltdowns and why, and going over a little bit of history in regards to that and how it actually is repeated. This is not new. We have seen this before in our history where people, they come together and they become fanatical and they latch onto an ideology and they just lose their minds and they do really insane things. And that's all part of conditioning and their own personal problems that they already had that they never dealt with. They got lost because of whatever they were missing and they attached to something that they thought could fill that void within them. And that's what I see with this. So before we really get into it, Derek, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your work.
Sure, yeah. But before, I love what y'all ladies are doing. The Girls Club, it's an awesome collective y'all got and had some really fantastic episodes. Just wanted to salute and pay homage and wonderful respect to all y'all. So, yeah. And obviously, with my wonderful co-host Leslie Powers in the house that her and I meet up weekly, usually, with our show, Dissolving the Divide. And yeah, I'm really happy and honored to be a part of this discussion because this is really some of like the meat and potatoes, if you will. Sorry, vegans, but as far as like these dialectical divides between people and the red and the blue, and if they even knew what was behind the curtains and all that jazz. But yeah, I'm a conscious DJ. I've had my YouTube channel Awaken in Mind, mixing, like some pretty cool soundtracks to higher states of awareness, if you will, for about a dozen years. And it's been, that's been my bread and butter, if you will. And just doing a lot of other things and just having my alchemical awakening in that really was the catalyst for me to, you know, it's that, heart wrenching notion when that heart is activated to like, wow, like this is what it feels like to be actually human in a sense and have that true heart-based intelligence and compassion and a love for life, love for self, and all these things. People need to experience this, but there's, initiations that they have to go through. It's not some one-off. It's not a TikTok, Tic-Tac video, whatever the hell, and all these things that this instant gratification has been leading the modern world into just a dystopian mentality in a sense, and just the state of affairs. And this is what we're going to get into as far as the meltdown. So yeah. Thank you.
And Leslie and Brittany, do you guys have anything to add before we start into some of the history and then we can really get going?
I have a quote here. I don't know if now is the good time, but I'm going to say it anyway. Um, it's just also kind of a little intro to another project I'm involved with called Healthcare Revealed with Corey Inderlaw, Stephanie Moe Davis, and Scott Gordon, where we're really looking at the connection between our healthcare system and statism and how that has become this very dysfunctional mess, basically. But we had a slide, and I pulled it out to give you this quote. This is a slide called Manipulating the Populace, insights by Dr. Juice Mirlu. It's from a viral video by After School, and he says that, and this is related to you said TikTok, right? So the use of social media. The rulers can use social media and its addictive nature to their benefit. Technology brings people into delusion. Quote, no rest, no meditation, no reflection, no conversation. The senses are continually overloaded with stimuli. Man doesn't learn to question his world anymore. The screen offers him answers already made. So I think that this is pertinent to this conversation. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, and I actually really love that because just to add to that, Leslie, I've noticed the exact same thing. Since I stopped working online, I've been off of Facebook and online much less. If I am on, it's for a certain window of time. I might make a couple of posts a month or so, but it has given me so much clarity. And I love that you brought up that quote. It seems very relevant.
Yeah, it is because it's been weaponized. The whole online fad, like I think it's kind of cool because it allows people to communicate in a far reach way, but when it is controlled by a parasite class ultimately, then that is where things can become more into the realm of fantasy. And the social media platforms they really do give a large avenue for fantasy to take place. And unless you actually see people or you talk to people, you actually do real communication with people online, you never really know who you're talking to, So it can be kind of tricky, and you got to learn how to use discernment to do that and not just use online social platforms for, likes or whatever it is, just use it as a way for whoever to find. And I think there's a healthy way to use it, but on the larger scale, it's completely corrupted.
It can be used to create fanaticism, right?
Yes.
This sort of extremism. And like you said, it's like where the focus becomes on this dream state, a fantasy type of ideology or worldview that's not necessarily based on, a full evaluation logically of what's really true and what's going on, but being emotionally attached to something, right? And then having a good intention with an ideal of some way it should be, right? And wanting to enforce it through some kind of a statist, method, right? But on the other side of that dream state is a bit of a dissociation from the reality. There's denial and avoidance and a real disconnect through all those distractions, right? And then so people, through social media, but just the media in general and the way it creates these segregated groups that fuel each other's passion and their mindset, and they feel safe and they get identity there, then there can be such an attachment to an idea or a propaganda, right? So if you think of all the political, the political stuff, they're politicians. They're like making promises that they're not going to keep. Like, doesn't everyone know that? There's like this weird disconnect from when I grew up, it just was really obvious and joked about all the time how politics was a joke, and that they spent $10,000 on a toilet for the president's airplane, and they can't balance their budget, and they're liars, and they don't follow through on their campaign promises. But it seems like people should realize that still, but instead people are hanging on to these sacred cows and then emotionally amplifying them and telling stories and attaching it to a political party as if, and then guessing, like drawing false conclusions about what it even means that people voted for someone else. It's just so distorted.
And it's its own kind of animal too. And what's even funnier about it is the parasite class didn't even have to create it to begin with. All they did was throw some poison in the water, and they're like, watch them. They're just gonna fucking go crazy. Like, watch, just leave them alone for a while, and they're gonna freak out. So that's what they did. And like, what's even funnier is like part of these meltdowns that are taking place, and I'm going to read a little bit of what I've put together, my thoughts of it, and you can let me know what I think is and this is really all like so far what I've seen on TikTok, and I don't have TikTok. I have a Twitter account. So what's happening is all the people who do have TikTok, they're saving the meltdown videos and then putting them on Twitter and making fun of it. So that's like what's happening on Twitter. And that's how I even know about it. And I'm like, okay, on one side, this is like actually hilarious because it's just so ridiculous and like very middle school type of drama atmosphere. And on the other side, I think about it, I'm like, this is actually kind of tragic because the reason why these women and a couple of men are like this is because they are mostly people who have very severe traumatic backgrounds. They have detachment issues. They had something horrible. Like if you see like the older women, it's probably going to have something to do with a very severe traumatic childhood problem or issue or situation that happened to them. If you see the younger kids, because I've been watching these, I know some of these people even. The younger kids, it seems to be just because they're in a society that's already in a habit of being severely detached from community. And you don't have kids who go outside and play and meet stranger kids and, go do wild, kids hanging out. Like, just as an example, like, I don't know how you would call it, because how do you describe hanging out with kids you just met out in the 80s and 90s, but in the movie the Stephen King it's a ragtag group of kids who've never met each other, and then they suddenly just run into each other, and now they're off building like a beaver dam in the forest, just why not? Now we're best friends. That's fine. Nobody does that anymore. And that, I think, is causing a very specific kind of illness where people just do not connect in a real person type of way in a lot of places anymore because of whatever fear is being sowed into them through media, social media, their parents, their school they go to, whatever it is that's in their environment that's sowing fear. So they just disconnect and they use the internet. And that's how they're trying to find their connection, which is the only avenue they have now. And they don't know another way. They don't know another life. So all they hear all day long is propaganda and false emotional care. And it's all coming from this place where I really care about you, but it's really all false care. And it's hyper emotional. And now everybody's got a mental illness because they are sad or they're depressed, or the sound is too much, or light is too much, and people
highly sensitive people.
People
common
are
right now identity.
Yes, and people are starting to think that this has something to do with them biologically, and nobody's looking at the external issues. The lights are too bright because LED overhead lights are bad for human brains. Like, that's a real thing. Like, people are having emotional troubles because now we have stuff like 5G in every single living room. And I think 5G is like it's got a signal off of it that makes us feel really uncomfortable. I mean, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I can actually identify it that way. It's always done that to me. But like, energy waves can do this to us. And, people are sad or depressed, which is a completely, or even anxious. And this to me is a normal human emotion in a world that is completely controlled and overran by a parasite class. This is a normal response. And people are like, no, I'm a little bit sad, so I need some sort of mood stabilizer, so I'm happy. And then mood stabilizers are, they can actually change the brain chemistry in a permanent way if they are taken long term. Like, this is all stuff that people don't connect or they don't think about that are connected, and they are very much connected to each other. They're not separate issues. It's all part of the same problem ultimately. So when I started seeing the meltdowns that were going off, I was like, oh, here we go. And there's all kinds of like fan fiction and nonsense that some of these people really believe. They really believe it. For instance, like now you have these far left people who kids and older women, they think, for instance, like Trump won the election. Okay, just more government. But they think, for instance, because somebody said it on like The View or a social media website that they follow or whatever it is, that Trump is 100% against abortions, that he's going to track women's health, that he's going to put all the far left, or woke or transgender or gay people or whatever into internment camps. They actually heard this from whatever far left source that they follow. And this is what they were repeating on these meltdown videos. They actually think that, the whole thing with Project 2025, all that stuff, all of this stuff was said on far left media things that they watch. And when you look into it, you can actually go and prove, no, Trump actually never said any of these things. He's actually even said he has nothing to do with Project 2025. All of these things are fictional constructs that the far left has done. Now, I'm not going to say that the far right is any better, but just going on this side, what I've noticed the most is that you can, the far left side of this animal, they're using that side of it to sow a lot of unhealthy, mentally ill inducing propaganda that's really making people insane through poison food, poison medicine, poison media, whatever it is, which then in turn instigates the far right side of the animal who's going, ha, 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 like, let's make insane asylums great again. And I'm like, okay, do you have
He's
any
our
like
hero. He's
yeah,
gonna root out all evil.
okay, let's make insane asylums great again. Do you guys know any moral or ethical medical people who can operate a mental institution, without chaining like autistic people to walls and lobotomizing women who have like heavy periods? Give me a break. You don't know what you're talking about. We actually still technically have mental institutions than hospitals. So it's not a thing that disappeared. So you have two sides of this animal who both have very different perspectives because of whatever it is they're watching through media, through social media, and other propaganda channels that they find. And there's not enough people who are like coming into the middle and evaluating the entire situation as like a full scope. So that is what's happening that I've come across as far as this goes. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm not going to make fun of them because it's a little bit tragic, but it is
I'm
also
laughing at the
very,
behaviors. I'm not laughing at them as a person and trashing them as a person, but I will laugh at those terrible behaviors.
yeah.
So Sarah, you had mentioned, there's two different extremes, and I have to share something Brian has shared with me quite often, because in my like new agey kind of phase, there were tons of half truths. There were tons of things that did serve me, but that's all they were. But I was there. A lot of people who fell into the new age movement are actually very left leaning people. And as soon as you kind of know the distinction between like what is, like you had said, they're very different beliefs. What is the left for and what is the right for? You can kind of see where their behaviors are coming from. And Brian often says the people who are very left leaning, they're deranged. They're more heart based people, but what they lack is logic. The heart without the mind and without logic can be very easily manipulated. Emotions, you know, are like water, and they take the shape of whatever contains it. And water is very symbolic of the feelings and the heart space. But like you said, Sarah, there are so many different things that have been pushed, like so many different stories about Trump. I also went down that rabbit hole and I was like, well, what the fuck did he actually say? You know, and what actually did happen? When you bring in logic, it picks apart all of the delusions. It picks apart all of the distortions, and all that can be revealed is the truth. You know, and with the truth, we have the proper awareness so that we can make choices that will actually yield us genuine results. But a lot of people are stuck on the far left. They're kind of stuck in the heart and they're lacking logic. A lot of people who are very far right, I'm even more identifying with more conservative beliefs, but I still feel somewhere kind of in between. But people on the very far right who are like, no, Jesus is the way,
Yeah.
no abortions at all. You're going to die. I don't care. You can't abort that. Like, you know, those people are more logic leaning, and they are lacking heart and they are lacking care. And I've seen this happen quite a lot, even in the freedom and anarchist community, including with myself and Brian, where, you know, we have heavy Libra dispositions between us. We will go explore each side of the scale, and then somehow we always come right back in the middle where it's like, okay, now we see what the perspective was on this half, and then now we see what the perspective was on this half, and like, what do we believe and what do we know to be true? And it's always a blend in the middle. But I just had to share that because there are very distinct behaviors, and there are people who are losing their shit. They literally think because Trump won, we don't have rights anymore as women. What?
Yeah.
Like, I'm still working a job and helping to manage a gas station in town. Like, I can still have a baby. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to kill a baby that I get impregnated with, so I'm not all for that abortion. But if you want to go do that, you can. Like, I
Yeah.
have sports, and it's like, we're not actually losing rights, but people are just so stuck in the delusion. They're stuck in those feelings of like, what if this is right? They're not actually going to see the evidence. They're not actually doing the critical thinking and seeing where's the bullshit, where's the truth, and what do I do with all of it.
Yeah, it's a fear-based response because of all the
Yes.
nonsense fantasy propaganda they've been sewn into. And both sides can kind of be like this. Like, you've got the far left who think that now women can't do anything except, cook. Now all we can do is like cook in the kitchen barefoot and have a bunch of babies and whatever. And but then they're also being told misinformation, medical misinformation, which is very dangerous. I feel that they're saying that, oh, now we don't have any abortion rights, and abortion rights include this, and it's a whole list of like medical treatments that they're listing. And I'm like, okay, there's only one thing on that list that actually has to do with abortion. All those other things are actually just regular GYN treatments for women. That's
And
it. They're not
people
abortion
don't
treatments. So
yes, and they don't
that's what
understand
bothers
Roe
me.
versus Wade either. They
Yeah.
think that Trump is gonna mandate this. Dude, actually, with the turning over of Roe versus Wade, that means that you have the power. Like, if you want to live somewhere that allows that, you can go move to a state, and that always votes for that option. I wouldn't call it a right. Like, it's per the state. No one's
Yeah.
saying you can or can't do anything. They're saying, it's based on the state, and that result is going to be based on the voters, assuming or if the representatives of that state are actually people of integrity. We already understand that there's a lot of people who have malicious intent, who are in office and doing their best to, yes, control the masses. I do, however, finally see like real people getting in there and saying, you know what? No, like, fuck you, assholes. Like, we're going to use this system, but we're going to use it the right way. So it's assuring that we have like real people who are trying to do something. It's kind of just a matter of like, are we going to band together and utilize the system for our freedom, or give up our rights and go into
because that's something that me and my husband have talked about. Like, even because we're all for an anarchist society. We're like, yeah, let's go for it. Who's ready to dismantle the Federal Reserve? Let's go.
And no one is the answer. Like, do you know how many people we've invited to come stay out here with us? We just stopped inviting like 2 years ago, and it's not what it could be, and we don't have space to house extra. We'd have to clear land. But like, for people who are fucking serious, we would do it. And everyone says they want to do stuff, but there's no follow through with action.
No.
So most people don't want to govern their own fucking life. They are happy to have a representative make all these different choices. But if we want our choices to be honored and respected, we have to care enough to do something about it. And there have to be enough of us to make a difference, so that we're not just swayed into whatever, corral they want us to be in.
Yeah. Well said,
go on, Leslie.
I think we need to hear from Derek here.
Yeah.
I know you got some ideas.
Oh, wow. I guess it's my turn to mansplain to the ladies, right? No, just kidding.
Oh, no.
But,
explain all you want, Derek. Explain all you want.
Yeah, we're not doing any man boycotting in the girls' club.
Yeah, we're not hostile towards you,
Derek. You're not down with that 4B movement, obviously, but yeah, so. But I like, I think it was Leslie, you mentioned or Sarah, it could have been you, with the red and blue, the dichotomy of that, and like the different types of characteristics of, like the Democratic, it has more of that feminine, which is why it's blue, and then the red and like the masculine and all that stuff. That's why it's a little more, it's got more yang energy, if you will, right? But obviously both sides are highly controlled, contrived, and confusing. And with the right, especially, that's kind of where we have, I guess, the Karens, if you will, and how their heartstrings have been pulled and exacerbated so much, and they just projectile vomit that stuff and that programming onto other people sometimes. And it's really kind of horrific to watch sometimes. And I'm going to get into some notes because I just dropped my pen. But I wrote a bunch down, and actually, even before y'all invited me on, I was actually going to do like I'm trying to get into Substack. Sarah, I got to be honest, you inspired me to get that going, but I love to write too. And yeah. So I was writing just a little bit, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to break this down into some notes and stuff to share after I cut the news. So, but I started off thinking of, like, this is election meltdown. This is like DEFCON 5 for people and their little worldviews of what they think is going on, and their identity politics and their ego attachments to their own enslavement, pretty much. If you want to break down the gubernare mind control, a la slavery, voila, there you go. But when I see people take to social media, we spoke about this, and it's like the internet and the social media stuff and like TikTok, these people have such a buffer zone. They're in their safety zone at their home, and they don't get to face any of the consequences to any of their fucking words, pretty much, as if they weren't talking to anyone on the street type of thing. You know what I mean? They'd have a much different tone speaking to people like that. Otherwise, you see the veracity of some of these people, they would get their shit wrecked.
Yeah, and not to cut you off there because I want you to continue,
Yeah.
But say this was like the Wild West days. No one mouths off to an armed cowboy. I'm just saying. Nobody has a purple-haired meltdown because they can't, hit on your kid or whatever in the Wild West. That shit doesn't happen. So just to add that, keep going, Derek, though.
No, totally. And people got to put these things into perspective. And where is your respect to your elders and your ancestry and all this like white shaming? Y'all need to shut the fuck up with that. You wouldn't be going to Europe and saying that kind of stuff. And all these people talking about, I got to move out of the country because Donald Trump. Who the fuck is trying to accept you into their country exactly? Where do you think there's some safe haven sanctuaries and this and that? Anyways, that's an aside from, how people just, go on the social media and they dump out their emotional turmoils over certain issues and scream into their cameras and TikTok and Instagram, whatever. And I'm sure you guys have noticed a pattern with some of these individuals. And I'm talking more psychologically, not what they look like. You know, people got to get, you know, beyond the, you know, I mean, although there are certain threads to that, but you know, people need to just take people as an individual basis and not have that overgeneralization, compartmentalization about these things sometimes and whatever. But as far as like the patterns, you see like this victim state, attention needy, identity politician, haven't done their inner work gobbledygook that they're just, you know, spraying all over social media type of thing. And they're doing it in an immature, reactionary, uncontrolled anger manner. And that's like their ventilation type of stuff. I mean, no one in our circles is gonna, you know, saving up their pent up anger. All right, you good to go? Press record. You know, like,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
all
a dignified
emotion
thing.
and action. There's no thought in there.
It's unrighteous indignation. If you ask me, it ain't righteous, you know?
Yeah, it's
'Cause we're
beast
not
consciousness. Bottom of the barrel, beast consciousness behavior.
It's like
Yeah.
a lack of responsibility to some degree for your own thoughts and feelings and expression. You know, it's choosing, you know, your emotion to justify a loss of proper behavior, emotional reasoning. It's people are identifying their identity. You know, they're identifying so deeply and closely to like you were saying, it's kind of a dream world. You know, an ideal or a belief or a worldview, which they could also be attaching that to a political party or a person, right? And so they're putting all this weight on this kind of savior, you know, to solve all the problems and fix the world, and the world will fall if this doesn't happen, you know. And as a mental health therapist, I've seen on lesser levels with some of my clients, like, you know, real depression and fear around the election, and feeling like really feeling internally like their house is burning down, that you know, what's being propagated in the media is linking in with their own trauma story somewhere, probably unconsciously, you know, like you were saying, Sarah, earlier, you know, and then it's activating parts of their own minds that are taking over from the logical brain. And they're not really thinking, not really using the trivium, but being activated emotionally and feeling like, you know, the world is ending, and that, you know, the environment is going to be destroyed, and that women will have no rights, and the children's future will be terrible. Now, this is the thing. To me, it doesn't matter whether it was left or right. We still have some dire future if we are going to go along with the politicians and, you know, kind of believe in either side, so to speak, you know. So bad things will likely happen, and then the lefts are going to come up and be like, you see, we need to go left, and, you know, in 4 to 8 years try to steer it to the left. You know, they're just afraid they won't be able to get to steer the ship back that way. Who knows? But if the left got in, it would be the same end, you know, direction, place that we end up. It's just going to be maybe a different route and a different way. But I think people are just so attached that it's hitting their fight or flight and their survival instincts. Yeah.
And it is all a fear-based response, and it's all emotion and action and no thought. And there's a handful of people out there who I think are using their thought, emotion, and action skill set to really figure, you know, navigate this. But for the most part, you know, you've got the far left who think that now, I mean, women are just, every time a woman gets pregnant, we just bleed out and die. That's like the result of every single pregnancy, apparently, which is extremely dangerous medical information to be telling anybody, especially our young girls. And then on the far right, like way far right, you have because I'm like Brittany, I would lean a little bit more towards the conservative side as far as like what would be morally and ethically appropriate. Like, for instance, like I'm not okay with like transvestites reading books, like sex books or whatever they are, to like elementary school kids. I'm not okay with that. I hope most people are not. It seems like a logical thing to not be okay with, but apparently it's not a logical thing. But the far,
It's
far
a
left,
phobia, don't you
or
know? I mean, geez.
right, the far, far right are becoming this group of people where Brittany said it's very, Bible obsessed. It's very Jesus
Some of
obsessed.
them
It's
are, yeah.
very, it's the kind of mentality that can actually set the clocks back a little bit. And then all of a sudden, people who are actually genuinely gay or trans or whatever, somebody who's a little bit, unusual, have to go back into hiding and not actually be just an authentic human being as they are. Because I have trans friends, I have, homosexual friends, and they've even all said to me, like, yeah, I ain't part of whatever that mess is over there. They're just like not even part of it. And that's going to be a problem if we have, like, we can't be on just one side or the other all the way. It has to be in the middle. And people need to understand, like, morality and ethics as a whole. Because, either side can be a trap if you go too fanatical on either side. So that's where, like, the big government causes a serious problem. I mean, and even our founding fathers, they said, don't split into two parties. Don't do it. They said it. There's multiple instances in history where they repeated it over and over. So clearly they knew what we know. And that's why I don't throw out any of that history, is because this has already been said. So I did pull up a little bit of
Can I just comment
interesting
a little bit, Sarah,
history.
before you move on, just on
Oh
that?
yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, I was thinking about how this phenomenon really displays a lack of social skills and an inappropriate way of approaching human differences and conflict, And there's like these extremes. Either people are really afraid of conflict and just going along to get along, just sort of like avoiding the fray, or they're loving conflict and stirring up conflict and, thriving off the intensity of arguments and stuff. So we get these two things, but very few people are really demonstrating healthy communication or problem solving skills, and I think that part of this is a result of our education system. I work with teachers, and more they're telling me that the education system is trying to take the social skills out of the curriculum for like preschoolers and kindergartners. They're pushing academics on the tiniest of kids, and these teachers are telling me like that's totally socially inappropriate. That's wrong. It's not
relevant
right.
for their station.
And so there is an agenda to take that out of, that's how people, the foundation of how people learn about how to get along with other people. And like you were saying, Sarah, there's sort of a trend towards operating socially online rather than in person. All this perpetuation of stories about like pedophiles being in all the neighborhoods. That's kind of like the city I live with. That was everything I was told, like, oh, they release all the pedophiles here and there's pedophiles everywhere. Don't let your kids out. So parents aren't even letting kids go out and play. It's like not the normal like soccer game in the streets and stuff. People are keeping their eyes like hawks, and a lot of helicoptering parenting and putting kids on devices to keep them quiet, out of their hair, and out of trouble, out of unsafe situations outside the door. And so they learn what they see. And what's been going on in the media or in the TV, it's like all this Big Brother kind of reality TV show. Let's put people in a crowded house and encourage drama and let them scream at each other and so forth, right? So, they're seeing shows with kids like running the roost, their parents totally disconnected, no real moral education, nothing helping kids really learn how to think. So there's this whole, setup to what we're experiencing right now in the world, I feel like, of emotional children that are adults.
I love that you said that, Leslie. I love that you said that, because that's what I was gonna comment on before. I feel like we just have a bunch of emotional children. Us who haven't like refined and developed like how we emotionally navigate. Like if you don't know how to do that and you're going to produce kids, like you're not going to be able to teach them those skills. And then if you don't have those skills, you're not teaching them, and then you're passing that job off to a tablet. That's exactly right. They're not socializing. I had mentioned in prior episodes about just watching my kids' volleyball games and seeing their late reaction times. It's because they don't have that like real life interaction and engagement. And I would love to see society more emotionally developed, because you saw a whole lot of that this election with all this crazy shit. It's like as soon as people don't, like, instead of saying like, oh, I don't know that, or I don't understand, or I need to look into that more, people just like resort to ad hominem attacks. And it's always the emotional name calling shit. It's like they don't have a valid point. And so instead of trying to like create a sense of connection and understanding, they're trying to just throw insults. So it's not about communication anymore. It's about harming. And just like you said, Leslie, we have all these damn reality TV shows and all these fucking shorts where people, it's like they're idolizing emotional responses or behavioral stuff, except that those aren't the healthy behavioral patterns. They're actually really unhealthy behavioral patterns. So all these kids going through this tableting and not having actual active parents, I see a lot of emotional children too. And I love that you have the perspective that you do, and you're able to pull in all of your nuggets, and that you've talked with teachers. I have an ex-mother-in-law who is in the schooling system and a teacher, and it is very hard, even in their ritzier, nice, more wealthy neighborhood. Even those kids, those ones are given everything they want. They were never taught responsibility and how to do for themselves, and they are emotional children going to grow up into emotionally stunted adults. And
Yeah.
I hate to see that, but I know if people got on their emotions, they could navigate life so much easier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well
but the
said,
problem
guys.
is, yeah, real quick, 10 seconds, because this is just
Go
in my
for it.
notes that I had. And Leslie, I'm curious if you spoke with any teachers that have actually seen or heard this, of the infantilization and coddling back students. We're talking about like college students back into like the cradle type of shit. And in Ivy League universities, apparently, check the great works of Truth Stream Media, narrated by a wonderful woman, Melissa Dykes, and her partner, David Dykes, I think. Anyways, they talk about how milk and cookies and things of that nature, and like Legos and things, are available for students to cope with, the election meltdown stuff. And it's like they're being treated like spineless infants. What is this type of thing,
It's a failure to launch syndrome. You've got 40-year-old children who, it really has come to a point. When a couple of weeks ago, I saw some of the first videos of these meltdowns, for instance, and it's actually a man my age who was sitting alone in the dark with his phone like this, bawling his eyes out because Trump won the election. Tears and everything, the whole works. And this is a serious problem, I think. And especially to see that in any of our men. I'm not saying men can't cry, okay? That's fine. But to be bawling your eyes out like you're 8 years old and somebody stole your favorite toy.
And then want to show yourself crying on video and sharing it with the world.
Yes.
That's really concerning.
That's a real problem. Like that's not embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think I would be.
Attention.
Yeah,
They feel like they never got it.
Yes, that's it. It's an emotional detachment problem. They've never even learned how to be authentically attached, or even learning the skill of being alone and knowing that it's okay to be alone with yourself and with your own thoughts. And it's fine to be alone. I love being alone. I love being with my husband and being married. That's awesome. And I love my daughter and hanging out with my daughter. But man, I really like them. I really like everybody to just go away sometimes and I'm just alone. And like I could
That hermit
sit
card
and
energy.
yeah, I could really sit for like hours in silence and just like I am okay with doing that. But I mean, maybe this is a skill that people really need to learn, that it's okay to be with just yourself
Right.
and
And to not need like a validation or likes
yeah,
or
exactly.
to be kind of agreed with. Because I think that you're right, people are feeling empty without that sense of like belonging and validation and attention, and it gives them an identity to be with associated with others who agree.
Yeah, the inner work, having that time space to yourself to, find that validation and love for yourself and cultivate that from there. And then, working with the tarot, the Hermit card, the Queen of Cups, mastering one's emotion. Take it to that kind of archetype,
Yeah, absolutely. Like spending that time to be just with yourself and develop that relationship with your high self and with God or whatever you want to call it. That is private personal time. I mean, even if you're not doing anything important, like I'll just like, sometimes I just like sitting and watching like old episodes of Dark Shadows, and listening to all the clips of the guy who does the show, things like action clip, like they have all of that in the old show, and he's the most irritable fuck you'd ever listen to. He's like clap, like he is like he's had enough because like they're just like whatever, and I'm just messing up all the time. So he's all ear. I love that guy. That's my favorite guy in that show. And I could just watch Dark Shadows like that and just like crochet, just be with my own thoughts. And like sometimes Derek, like with writing, that's where I really get my, I can think through my ideas, and that's okay to do. And I think that's something we really need to bring back. And then when we start maybe encouraging that more within our communities, perhaps we will stop seeing so much of the distortion online that's taken place.
And teaching our children, to be okay with quiet and lack of stimulation, right? And we all can benefit from being in quiet without sounds, right? And sitting with ourselves and turning our attention inward and noticing and giving ourselves time to think through, because we're constantly distracted and in this sort of artificial stimulation system that is created through our phones. We are not going to be really discovering truth. We're always going to be in some kind of a reactive programming to what we're receiving as stimulation, and we won't be sorting that out. So it really is like a need for a detox or a separation more than ever, because of how much we're bombarded with stimulation. And you can't even know your feelings and thoughts sometimes unless you sit back.
Like, I think we should throw out a challenge out there, like for all of the adults out there. Go back to a time when you were like 12 years old and maybe you were a latchkey kid. Let's bring back latchkey kids. Start raising your kids like a latchkey. I'm telling you, it's the way to go. They'll turn out fine. They'll be fine. I promise they're going to be fine. And as an adult, leave your phone at home when you go for a walk to wherever, or go to the grocery store, or do your errands. Leave your phone at home. I mean, I'd say don't leave your ID at home too, but if something happens, like a cop or whatever, now you need an ID for every freaking thing. But I otherwise I'd say leave your ID at home. Don't carry your social security card in your wallet. Leave your phone at home. Like, oh, well, if, something happens, you'll get the message at some point, really, you'll be fine without your phone for an hour or two. And see how that feels while you're out. Just disconnect from this like false connection system that is being built, and just leave it at home for a while and forget that it exists. And just be like,
sit in nature and observe, maybe.
Yeah,
just observing your surroundings, especially outdoors. Right?
Yeah. I mean, don't worry about taking pictures or preserving the moment. Just live in the moment and be part of that life, be a human being within reality. So because there's not enough of this that is going on, or it doesn't seem like that anyway, this is definitely causing quite a bit of distortion. I think it's definitely part of the illness of this. So I did want to share a little bit of history that I thought was amusing. We did go over our takes on the whole situation already, which is totally fine. And anybody who wants to really go into it more, you can go and check out the Substack, and there will be on the CF Girl page at least, and there will be the full show notes that any of us can post that you can go look into. So what I came to the conclusion of is I'm calling this the hot mess gone wild syndrome, because it is certainly a hot mess for the 4B movement and what's happening. We've gone over this, what they're doing. They're boycotting men, they're shaving their heads, they're I guess not going to wear makeup or use filters on their phones anymore. I'm like, maybe don't do that anyway in the first place. Why are you doing that? That's a little bit deceptive to begin with, but they're not having sex. They're withholding the rights to their, holy vagina or whatever it is they think they hold. And which is a little bit absurd to think that just every single man is just clamoring at you. They're going to break up marriages. They're going to seduce husbands. They're going to sleep with your wives. There's all kinds of, they got a whole list of things. Now there's a secret plan on Rosie O'Donnell's private TikTok channel where they're going to do something about Trump. Okay, it's a whole thing that they got going on. It's a hot mess.
They sound like conspiracy theorists,
right? I mean, there's a whole thing going on. It's they got a plan. We gotta see where this goes. Like, get your popcorn out. It's gonna be interesting. They're gonna do something wild, like. But the shaving.
Too. Go ahead, Sarah.
Go on, Brittany.
It's just ironic because they want to do this to like get back at conservatives and stuff, but really by them not breeding and not being presentable, it's just literally kind of like allowing that, like they're actually even like what they're protesting, they are giving rise to. Okay, so there's going to be less people like you if you don't breed. Yeah, like you're trying to get back at them. But they're the ones who are going to be happy. They're the ones who are going to be in love. If they want kids, they're going to have that. It really is when you think about it.
It is funny because
it's very contradictory and ironic.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, so you're doing what the conservatives want you to do. I guess everybody wins. I don't know. How do you?
It's funny.
I don't know. Weird. I don't know how to evaluate that logic, but. I wanted to bring up, I thought it was particularly interesting, the shaving of the heads part, because they are going to regret that, because it is a bitch to regrow your hair.
Experience.
Look at my hair. I'm pinning it down with pins.
You do such cute stuff with your hair, Sarah, but I relate to that because I usually grow my hair long and then chop it off, and then I can't do the same. I can't do what I want with it, so I just love it for that.
Yeah. My meltdown, I shaved my head because I was tired of the undercut, and I'm like, I don't know why I just didn't grow the undercut out. I don't know, but I'm just like, I'm sick of doing this, and just I went totally 90s with it. So, it gives people who shave their heads like for regular reasons a bad name, like people who have cancer or alopecia or something like that, have a real problem. But I thought it was particularly interesting that they did this, and I'm like, history does repeat itself in the weirdest of ways. And one of those things was the Manson girls. And I started looking into this, and just a little history for people to look at more later. Charles Manson, he was found guilty in 1971. He built a death cult, and he brought in followers, most of them being women, young women. And he picked them up. A lot of them were homeless or lost younger women who had troubled lives in their family, or they were runaways, or this was the majority. Yeah, this was
manipulatable.
Yeah, very impressionable young women who already had trouble within themselves through either already being mentally ill or having a horrible life in their family for one reason or another. Usually that's why girls run away, is because there's some kind of abuse going on in the home. And that's typically why girls run away from home, unfortunately. So he would target these young women, and he would give them the things they thought they needed: emotional connections, sexual connections, things that are very external, very temporary. So he weaponized their emotions, and before you know, you had these girls being obsessed with him. They would do anything he said. He was, the Jesus of their group. And that's the funny thing about it, is Manson never actually murdered anybody himself. He got other people to do it for him, mostly these young women who just did it. And during the trial, specifically during the trial of Charles Manson, there were 3 women who were being convicted of the charges of actually murdering some of the people that they murdered. Like, I think it was Sharon Tate, and that whole group. And, people can go and look into the history, but this is just talking about the trial. Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, and Patricia Krenwinkel. They were 3 women who were actually tried for some of the murders. And during the trial, what they did was, when Manson was convicted and sentenced, they all shaved their heads. So Manson shaved his head. They all shaved their heads in protest of Manson's conviction of the death penalty. And they all went to prison. While they were in prison, they shaved their heads. And these girls are so far gone, though. It's just a shame that he's the one who got to them before somebody else who may have been able to treat them for their problems. I mean, really, we are all responsible for our actions in the end. They are responsible for what they did, and they got what they deserved, I think. That being said, when they got wrapped up with Manson, they were still very young. They hadn't committed any violations. And the reason why they were so willing to attach themselves to this ideology that Manson had created was because of the same exact reasons that these, and they're not even half the population, the far left fanaticals. It's like less than 18% of these people who are doing, the really fanatical far left behaviors, the emotionally unchecked behavior. They're all lacking the same things, and it's all coming from the same kind of problems. So people aren't seeing that it's because of this, it's because of that. And I'm like, no, really, it's because these people have a void in them, and it started from a young age of some kind of issue of detachments. And back then it was probably because, obviously it wasn't an internet issue. It was just a social issue. Now it's a different kind of social issue that involves the internet, that only exasperates the disconnection and the lack of empathy that is developing with people who are obsessed with being online and social media and everything that goes on with that. It's just exasperating the problem. But the way I see it, all of these these people are vulnerable because they're coming from a place where they're already somewhat broken to begin with. Like they were born broken somehow, or they were, which is rare. It's actually pretty rare to be born with a genuine mental illness genetically, or a lot of them are broken because of very difficult situations that they dealt with when they were young or children and had that kind of distortion already, and it broke them. And that is a recipe that really can create a very dysfunctional adult later on. And you could go in any direction. All it takes is the right catalyst. So Manson was the catalyst for these young women. And like I said, he never actually murdered anybody. He was just given an order. And these girls are, in that sense, are the order followers. And it's no different when people attach themselves to very distorted ideologies like what currently the far left are attaching themselves to, where it's all fear-based and unchecked emotion, and there's no filter. The catalyst is this fear-based response. I think that really has to do with now we should just, love and care and not give any consequences and not be responsible. It's like a situation now, like that's being propagated by government and by institutions. And that's being exasperated even worse now because we have things like pharmaceuticals, like mood stabilizers, that really do make things worse in the end, I feel. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I thought it was very funny that when you have a recipe like this, it's the same recipe in history. And it doesn't really matter what the situation is. It matters what the catalyst is. And that's how I am looking at this. So my questions, so I did write, just as a thought afterwards, this is just one example of how a fanatical group of people who have been led to believe fantasy and who are lacking severe levels of authentic care and within their lives and can go wild to the point of mentally ill meltdowns and display them publicly. The Manson girls did exactly what these young people are doing on TikTok. It's the same problem. It also shows that how it is for attention, and all threats are merely just that, because the Manson girls, they also had a lot of threats that they dished out. And what happened? They went to prison. That's it. Nothing happened. A threat that is voiced and has nothing to back it up. Order followers don't do things on their own. They do as the leader tells them to do. So I conclude that all the far left in this situation that we're talking about, fanatical people, which is a very small group of people, even in the left side of the bigger picture, having meltdowns on the internet are nothing more than temper tantrums that are influenced by a parasitic force, sowing disorder, false care, and spiritual slavery. The entire goal of the parasite class is to cut us off from the very concept of God and create people more like them so that they can do just whatever they want, like do whatever they want with their children and traffic them and whatever other things they want, no consequences to any actions. So now, by putting aside the fact that all government in general is illegitimate in the first place, let's focus on the issue of the weaponized mental illness that has been ramping up since the 60s at least and encroached on the human mind. So how was this been weaponized? How does it operate? Who is behind this and who is at fault? And I think all of them have different answers, but they're all connected to the same problem. And there's only one problem as far as I can see it. But that's what I wanted to correlate it, and just to give people a perspective that this isn't new behavior. This happens because we have a parasitic class that sows this kind of disorder on purpose. And I'm not saying Manson was part of any kind of parasitic class ruling family. I don't know. He might have been.
Or
Might
used by one, right?
or used by one,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let's look at the different. Look at the similarities. What you're saying, right?
Yes, but he is a genuinely born genetic psychopath. They did studies on Manson's brain. He is not a secondary psychopath who developed psychopathy. He was actually born genetically a psychopath. He's got the miswirings in his brains. So that, like, and they can prove that now with people. All you have to do is put somebody in a brain scan and you can see it. So,
regarding the psychopathy thing with him, now I have to look deeper into this because I haven't, but I've recently heard that specifically Charles Manson went through the MK Ultra programming.
okay.
And I could use and that the CIA contracted him as an experiment essentially. And it's just interesting, and I could definitely learn more about that. I'd like to, but Sarah, you were mentioning a lot of those behaviors, like with the girl, like how Charles Manson didn't actually kill anybody. And yes, he's still a psychopath, whether he went through MK Ultra or not. You know, at the end of the day, that's what he became. But it's interesting because a lot of narcissists and codependents, they go hand in hand. They really do. And narcissists really get off on, and we can compare our government to this, but they get off on controlling people. And you've talked quite extensively, and we've mentioned, the emotional child thing. Well, we literally have people who are very codependent. They're trying to fill that void, but they're doing it not by self-sourcing, not by filling their own cup and taking that time alone and quiet and trying to understand themselves, grow, heal, yada yada. Instead, they're looking to the outside. And people who are very codependent can get very attached to narcissists and become very easily manipulated. So I have to say this because I've just been there. If you fall on the more codependent side of things, I highly encourage you to learn to fill your own cup. Don't just seek validation and approval and love from somebody, because that's where you can get intermittent love and really unhealthy patterns of manipulation. But I just had to put that out there because sure, there is a parasite class, but at the end of the day, we are the captains of our lives. We are the leaders of our lives. We are sailing, the ship of our body with our souls. Like, we have to be accountable. So if you fall on the more codependent side of the scale, or even narcissist side of the scale, which we can see a lot of with the social media now, focus on those things and go learn about how to heal those things, because then you're going to be less prone to being swayed. And once you see this on a personal one-on-one dynamic in your life, you will also see it bigger on larger scales too. So I just had to throw that in there.
It's really well said, Brittany.
Well
it's
said,
like
Brittany.
You're reading
Thank
my
you.
mind. Yeah, I don't need to say what I was gonna.
Yeah.
Well, it touches upon something I wrote, in regards to some of these characteristics and things of that nature in regards to Stockholm syndrome. And yeah, with coupled by the parasitic nanny state, granny state, whatever colored panty state, the patriarchy, because they're so patriotic, right? Does anyone get that phonetics right? Patriarchy, patriotic. Are women understanding that when they're talking about smashing whatever the fuck? Anyways, so people gotta recognize and realize and put their shit in check in regards to indoctrinated Stockholm syndrome-esque, cognitive dissonant, cultish shadow projections and hyper dualistic overassumptive thoughts about anyone who didn't vote for their side or whatever. And this is like the tribal stuff, and obviously the dialectics, the divisiveness, and it's really sad how people just think in these black and white terms of like, if you didn't vote for Harris, you're a Trump supporter. They never thought once like, well, maybe the Democrats were kind of shitty and they didn't really like the options or whatever the fuck. And the fact that all these women are defending Harris, who was next to a fucking creepy ass molester dude, Joe Biden, who's, like literally fucking like retarded or something like that.
And an
Dementia?
absolutely confirmed pedophile. So
Right, exactly. So, but no, all of a sudden they just push Harris, a couple months, and like, we worked so hard to get her on the back, the stuff. Like, no, you didn't. Are you what the
Yeah,
fuck
with
do you
hiring
actually
out
do?
people
You
to
know,
twerk and do shows. It's so hard. Sorry, go on.
oh, no worries. It's just, people got to really consider things outside of their little box and echo chambers and all these things, and maybe check to see if the shit stinks. But some people have their heads so far up their ass that they can't smell it. It's just omnipresent. It's what they're used to now, kind of thing.
yeah. And we don't consider people who like, well, what if you didn't vote at all? And
Right? Yeah.
what if you don't want to vote for, I mean, I even know people who are Democrats, and they're like, I ain't voting for Kamala. She's like autistic. Like she can't even string a sentence together. Like based off of that, like alone, like all she does is talk in circles. And it's like, I don't even, I know Democrats who are like, I can't vote for that. I don't even know what the hell she said. Like what is
She
that?
says whatever
But
she's
it makes them
paid to
feel
do.
good, right? It's that
But it makes them feel
polarity,
good, and
and they're
it's
missing
like,
that logic, like you said before, right?
yeah, no logic, right? There's no logic. It's all heart-based. And like Brittany said it very well, the far left is very heart-based and operating on that like hyper inauthentic feminine qualities that are distorted. And then the far right are operating on the very more logical and, inauthentic male
Religious-ish.
aspects of reality. So or mentality, I should say. So it is all like there's no balance in the middle, and there's nobody coming into the middle and going, well, maybe we should try something different. Maybe we should learn from history and not split up our parties.
And
Not split the party.
It really resonates with Mark Passio's presentation of the left and right hemisphere imbalances.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is just kind of that concept in action, I think.
Yeah. And just as much as there can be an inauthentic feminine side quality, the inauthentic woman, there can be the inauthentic man. And really it all comes down to being an inauthentic, distorted, fractured, imbalanced human being, whether this is whether it's external feminine or masculinity or internal feminine or masculinity. It really can cause all the same problems. It's all just distortion, and it all creates fear-based responses. Like the far left thinking now that all women are going to be thrown into internment camps or whatever. And, currently in the very far, far right are thinking that anybody who's gay or trans is some kind of predator, which is also not true. So, I mean, people need to start coming to more logical conclusions about things. But I think the only way that we can do that is by understanding our history and understanding that maybe we shouldn't just run to the priest in the white lab coat to hand us some kind of medication to make us feel better. We need to start taking responsibility for all of our emotions and all of the things that we take into ourselves, because we're only taking them in because they affect us somehow in a way where they speak to us on a level that maybe we don't even recognize. So that's what a trigger is. Something happens and you're like, what? And you get all triggered, but really that's just like something you haven't dismantled yet. And it's a emotion or something that happens where you haven't fully evaluated it yet, so that you can correct whatever the problem is. So that's how I've come to understand it. So anyway.
Yeah, well said.
So I want to hear more from Derek too, and everybody about what they think are some of the solutions that we could come up with, or I don't know, whatever you guys think about it.
Ooh, yeah. And I'll also give a male perspective of just observations of, these females, with too much yang up in their thing and this and that. And I've been living in France for 15 years. I've had a wonderful, beautiful wife we were together for 11 years. She's from Tahiti, French Polynesia, if you will. And I'm currently with a wonderful older woman. We were divorced, but it's all good. And she's older, 54 years old. The last child she had was 45 years old. She went through a lot of holistic protocols to have like pleasurable experiences with all three of her kids during childbirth. She didn't experience pain. She didn't take pain, all that killer stuff, whatever. And so if women can get back more in touch with their inner yonis, that would be a good start. And yeah, she's actually brought into life, aided the birth of over 9,000 children, actually, in her line of work. But she does acupuncture and hypnotherapy right now. It's cool. She's awesome. And it's interesting for me. I'm from California, yet I haven't been with an American for like half of my life, pretty much. And I don't see the reason. I don't know. I have different preferences, I guess, and there's just a different mentality and feminine essence that's expressed in other countries. And a lot of people have the assumption that, because they're in these bubbles, right, in these echo chambers, that they think, they got, the right thing and they're living the life and they want everyone to have it type of thing. And they just don't understand how some things are actually better elsewhere and all these things. And another good thing for people to read, because this is being brought up like it's very ostensibly, I don't know who kind of made this a buzz phrase to say, but The Handmaid's Tale, women are actually concerned that this is going to happen because Trump is in office. There's another fucking puppet at the helm. And as if their, choice isn't a fucking puppet or the lesser of two fucking evils. It's still fucking evil, people. Figure it out. And reverse evil and bring life back into yourself and the people around you. Because, just dwelling on this evil shit, you can see just the doom and gloom sadness within their eyes, the windows to the soul type of thing. But actually read the book, A Handmaid's Tale, and try to look into someone's breakdown of it that has studied the occult or esoteric information, if you will. And you have to supplement those types of readings with the 1984's A Brave New World and just Slave New World, if you will, kind of thing. And
Logan's
really
Run.
yeah. Draw back from your ego attachments to what you think you know on a lot of stuff, and honestly observe your alignment to whatever political party and what the trajectory has been over the past 4 years, or even decade, even since we've been born, kind of thing. It's a same shit but different smell, and whatever the hell, as I like to say. So as y'all mentioned, it comes back to that more self-dependence and responsibility. And yeah, I hear y'all ladies out there in internet land, and strong independent woman. That's great. Yeah, I'm a son of a very strong independent woman who made a killing of a success as an immigrant from Germany, and I'm not out there like virtue signaling like, and this and that. It doesn't have to be that way. Just live as the example of what you want to see more in the world, and less yapping and more snapping into action, aligned with your, heart, mind, and guts, logic, rhetoric. No, logic, understanding, rhetoric. Get the great.
So that's really something. That's really something to say, though, about your mom. I think more women could maybe. That's pretty powerful. Like less virtue signaling and more action on your own part, on the world you want to manifest around you. But yeah, that's interesting. You brought up The Handmaid's Tale, because people are like, this is what happened. It's going to be the Handmaid's Tale world. And I'm like, have you ever read that book? Because what you're describing is going to happen. None of that happened in The Handmaid's Tale. And so, and also that was a situation that took several decades for them to get to that point. And they all think Trump is going to do it as soon as he enters the office in January, and he's going to be able to accomplish these things within the 4 years he has left, because he can't do a third term. There's only 2 terms allowed. He's already done 1. So they think that he's going to be able to create this world of absolute male dominance over women in 4 years. I mean, the Nazis couldn't even achieve it. They failed in that whole thing that they did in World War II. And it took them like nearly 20 years just to get to the point where they were actually putting people in camps.
Yeah, what a position of powerlessness to, to think that could get that out of hand. I mean, and it's not, in the meantime, the slow churning is happening, right? The frogs are getting, increasingly hot temperatures inside. It is happening, but it's not because Trump's there or Kamala could have been there, to stop it. That's the thing people are delusional about.
Yeah, it's insane. They think it's all like can be put on a speed run. And I'm like, I was watching one woman actually have a breakdown in her closet. She's in the closet. I don't know why she's in the closet, but she's in the closet going, you guys better prepare because Trump won now. And this is our last year on this planet, because say goodbye to global climate change. Oh, the last year in her closet.
She could stay there. Sorry.
The clear lack of using the trivium. Oh, can't really hear you, Brittany. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Brittany. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm just going to go dark and go to the bathroom.
I wanted just to highlight the trivium process, the grammar, logic, rhetoric, that's clearly missing, even the concept of doing such a thing is missing. And that it's, really important to take in a variety of information and then take time to think about it, right, before you choose to speak or choose an opinion. But I think that, people are not talking with each other. People are not getting to know their neighbors, right? Because otherwise, there wouldn't be such extremism if you're actually heart to heart kind of getting to know the people around you. And I think that that's a real reflection on our society and a big part of the problem, that people are not interacting with each other and seeing that everybody is a part of their tribe and circle, and that you need to learn how to get along and understand each other's perspectives and have a win-win kind of mindset. And I think as a solution that, as opposed to having stereotypes, assumptions, and biases, right, which is a big part of the problem, and fear, that we need to instead come together and get to know each other through building community at the grassroots level, in real time, real people, to do an inventory of their environment and their home, their space, their neighbors, their community, and start talking with each other and seeing each other themselves as an agent of change, having that internal locus of control, recognizing that we are a part of the solution, and that it's through our unity, with people, through building bridges and understanding, and really coming to the heart of the matter at where we're alike, where, that we can overcome these problems, and that we don't need a puppet, up there on the TV screen to do this for us. That's actually a delusion. And by voting for one side or another, you're actually creating more division and more of that extremism that, is upsetting everyone.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, is like people forget it's what we do with our communities and how we build that. And there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. that child is every single person in our community. That's not just the stewards looking after our neighbors' kids and making sure they don't get picked up or, by some weirdo.
Right. And it doesn't mean sending all your kids to daycare or preschool or letting the state raise your kids. It's more around, recognizing that we all have a responsibility for the, the social environment that we're living in. And, that we have some responsibility for solving these problems. And I think that overwhelms people. I get that. It is overwhelming because we've, through this prolonged period of like some degree of slavery, our humanity is just in a mess, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, understanding yourself, emotionally and cognitively, and understanding how the human psychology works really is essential for this. And being able to witness yourself and to observe your logical fallacies or your cognitive distortions, understanding what that is, and understanding that emotional reasoning is not logical. Okay, emotions are not logical. They are not telling you the truth, and that they're a signal to pause, calm down, reflect, and gather yourself, right? Evaluate your thoughts, and then value and seek the truth, as opposed to being right or just gaining, your moment in the sun for validation. Share that.
Love that. I was just gonna say a different version of the same thing, Leslie. I totally agree. Just if we can get more people on board with doing the inner work, we'll actually see more progression. And I don't mean like the leftist progression, but more forward movement, and we'll see more of the changes that we all want. And Derek, you had said it earlier, part of that is like being that change, and working to become what you want to see in the world. And admittedly, through working and helping to manage a gas station, I have been very humbled. Admittedly, in ways, I am overqualified to work at a gas station. And I had to swallow a great big thing of pride, but I am so honored and humbled to do my job. And it's just a job that brings in money and that brings in resources to my family, but I'm really getting out there and getting one-on-one connection time, and the feedback I get is what is so humbling. I don't know how to explain it without sounding, like I'm full of myself, but I just get such beautiful praise. It just shows me, it shows me that like what we're talking about and what we're doing, it really does make an influence and an impact in the world. It really fucking does. And, just doing your inner work and then just making genuine connection or small talk or just all these little situations where you get to put into practice in real life, that has just been so humbling because I've been working at home for several years. So to get out back in the world amongst the common person, they have a lot of wisdom too. They might not be into the esoteric stuff. They have real life wisdom. But if we can all work on an individual level, I really think we'll see the big changes that we all so desire to see in the world.
Yeah, street smarts. There's a place for all of us, and we all got different places to be in as far as like what we can give to our communities, and it's supposed to be different. We're not all supposed to like know all the same stuff.
Yeah.
We're supposed to find different things to know so that we can share that and broaden up the horizons.
I wanted to bring up just one other thing that was a push my buttons. So, because what I want to say is another solution is that doing what is right, and really people seeking to contemplate what is right and to establish, true morality. And there's some stuff in the media that's really messing up this conversation about morality. I recently saw a clip of Elon Musk saying some absolutely ridiculous bullshit, distracting people about what is morality. And he was basically saying that, it's immoral for people to work from home. It's just not fair that there are people, have to go to work build a car, and that some people get to just decide they get to work from home, and that's immoral. And it was like so bizarre to hear this guy who people like adore and like see as this super smart guy totally obfuscate what morality is, because morality has nothing to do even with even fairness necessarily, right? Morality is about doing harm, really hurting other people, stealing from them, killing them, violating them sexually, lying, coercing, right? All of these things. It's not about, deciding I want to, be an auto mechanic, and because that's my choice, I'm going to be working in a cold garage. And, now every receptionist has to sit in the cold garage with me, right? Or, that people can't have a choice to where they work. I mean, even just that idea is participating in this slavery system of overregulation and saying everybody needs to be working in an office during these hours the way I say that you need to be doing. It's totally against freedom to start regulating in the direction of talk like that. It was.
I mean, think about Elon Musk's generation is very much more in the generation that has more computer technology based influence, and he is a very, very high IQ individual. So he has certain things that he likes and can find. Like, it is nonsense to say that, oh, this isn't fair, and that makes it not moral, because morality has nothing to do with fairness. Like you said, morality is about truth and what the truth is. And sometimes the truth is not fair, but that's just, it is anyway. And
who's to say it's not even fair? Because you get to choose your vocation.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
You get to choose. And the working conditions are part of that, right?
Yeah.
So and then you have the choice to do something else. It's not about making someone else be as uncomfortable as you, or have a different access, because we all need to have that freedom to choose, as long as we're not causing harm. And I think we need to watch out for those types of messaging and start to question what people say, rather than just like, oh, I just learned something from Elon Musk. You are being immoral and unethical because you're working from home.
Yeah, I mean that like, I didn't hear him say that, but that would be nonsense for anybody to say. I mean, I can appreciate Elon Musk for the fact that he does, he has lifted the gates as far as freedom of speech goes. He doesn't ban people off Twitter because they said some joke that isn't, that's somewhat offensive, like stuff like that. I can appreciate him for doing that, because he's got qualities that are leading him down a path that's more of a human being path. But then he's got other ideas that he's way more technically involved. He's the kind of person who I think maybe thinks that, technology in itself is the answer to, humanity's freedom ultimately, which I don't agree with. I'm not sure if that's actually what he thinks, but it seems like he is more technically involved in that way. So, I mean, but for anybody to say something like that, morality has nothing to do with our perceptions of what we wish we could do or not do or whatever. It has nothing, like, we create our own boundaries ourselves. We create our limitations. We're the ones who stop us from doing this, that, or the other thing. If somebody finds a way to work from home and build a career working from home, go for it. If somebody has to go into an office just to, build their resources, then that's what needs to happen. And I mean, I think everybody would like to work from home, but
are any of these things causing harm to anyone? Because that's the question we need to ask when it comes to morality.
None of those, like the jobs we do, unless you're like physically violating the rights of others, it doesn't matter what our jobs are really, or how we do them.
Yeah, and moving towards freedom, would include having more choice about the parameters under which we work, right? The hours under which we work, the way we do our job, the amount of respect and freedom or respect we're given for our own knowledge and our own decision on how to get our work done. I mean, that's really how I see, where freedom under natural law would go towards. It would be more self.
And some people can't do regular jobs. Like, I mean, I'm one of those people who I got physically burnt out in a way because of my own stuff, but I, did bartending and restaurant work for over a decade, almost like 15 years, or I forget exactly what. And then I've worked in retail. I worked multiple jobs at a time. I've done the in-office job. I've worked in offices, and I did that for the majority of my life. And I just was lucky enough that I got to a point where my body literally cannot handle that kind of standing on my feet for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, or even 5 days a week. Unfortunately, like, my mind is ready to go. I can do all that work. But my body, after about 6 weeks or so, at the age of 40, with my particular condition and the way my insides work now, will only land me in the hospital. And it actually will land me in the hospital. Like, this has happened multiple times where we had to come to the conclusion that I cannot work a regular job. And I was only lucky enough to have a skill to fall back on as a seamstress. So not everybody can do the office job or be in that. I mean, I don't say that for people to feel bad for me. Don't feel bad for me. This is just like part of life and part of changing how we, create that new avenue for ourselves and create our resources. And sometimes you just have to change and go with wherever the tide takes you. And that was just my own. And everybody's journey with that is different.
And I think that the point of one of the points of that story is to not see yourself as a victim, right? In your lot in life.
Yeah. And not to see yourself as trapped in, like, oh, I'm this, and then that's it. Don't feel like you're trapped. Be a man of many hats. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to change your condition within your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody can do it. So,
well, I'm close to having to get off for the day here.
Yeah. I think, we're reaching that 5 o'clock point. So we've done another 2 hours of the Girls Club, and we'll be back next month as usual with another great discussion. And I want to thank Derek, and I would like him to, if everybody's got a little word to say before we go, and some advice or something for people to consider.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. How's the career landscape going to change over the next 4 years? I understand the liberal tears, but don't get caught up in the loosh, and don't get caught up in those narcissistic traits where you actually get off on other people's suffering. This is not what conscious human beings are supposed to be doing to each other, because we see whether the right wing or left wing, they love to laugh it up, and the meme wars and all this stuff when their side loses or whatever. So it's just it's really petty. It's still caught up in the base level consciousness, the checkerboard Masonic, black and white dualistic thing. Want to take it there, So yeah, people just really got to get back to themselves, and yeah, it's being on the plane of effects is what people are protesting on, and this and that. They're not able to really make change because they're not on the plane of cause. When you understand natural law, cause and effect, causality, those types of things. So we have to understand, like, the politics are on the side of effects, and you're not going to change things through that, unfortunately, to where you think things are going to go. And yeah, there's thousands of people hacking at the branches of evil. Very few are striking the root, yet people that actually think they're hacking the branches of evil are actually aligning to it through government and that kind of thing. So keep those in mind, and also vote with your dollar in regards to all the oligarchic corporations that are backing a lot of government and are protected by, and all the lobbyists and all these things, right? So all things need to be considered. And yeah, I don't pledge allegiance to this draconian shit. I don't know why anyone would either, you know? So c'est la vie, co-sign your name on natural law, freedom, and your own soul kind of stuff. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Derek, for joining us. Does Leslie or Brittany have any last thoughts?
I don't have anything more to add. Just want to plug Dissolving the Divide. People get on that on YouTube or Odyssey or Rumble. BitChute. And then I have my page, Leslie Powers, on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. And then I have AliveThrive.life is my website. Please also check out Chris Jansen's Thursday night live show, And Evil. There's a lot of wonderful content creators out there in the natural law world to plug, but those are the ones I'll mention. Yeah, good conversation. Yeah, thanks for the topic, Sarah. Yeah, go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you, Derek, for joining us. It's always a pleasure. I love touching base. I need to remember to message you. I suck about that, so I'm sorry, but always a pleasure to see you. Really happy we all had this talk. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining me in this topic. As silly as it seems to cover it, because it's so inconsequential, really the 4B movement is a phase that'll pass like man versus bear. And all the other middle school, all the other middle school phases that, a failure to launch adults seem to be going through. But it'll pass just like everything else. But I think it is important to point out this distortion and that this is not new behavior. So I would like to leave off everybody who joined us today and listening. Thank you so much for coming and reviewing. Don't forget to leave your comments and, go check out all those great content creators and Derek's work and Leslie's work. And even Brittany's work with her cookbook that she created with Nikki, and which is a great cookbook, I would say. And just go out into the world and don't let other people tell you who you are, influence you into thinking this or that. And everything that you hear out in the world, whether you think it's a trusted source or not, that's fine, but use your adult discernment skills and investigate first. And go inward and develop that private relationship with yourself. And then think about interacting with your community after you've done a little bit of that kind of digging. So thanks once again. This was number 13 of the Girls Club. Is that right?
Yeah.
13, just over a year. And we've got more stuff to come. So thank you, and we'll see you next month on the Girls Club.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great
Thanks,
work.
Derek.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.